We will focus today on probably more technical things than you've been hearing during yesterday's sessions and today morning, because Piana is mainly technology company that providing a lot of support to news media businesses. But over the years, working with hundreds of different brands in this vertical, we also discovered that there is a lot of knowledge to share, a lot of learnings that we are discovering along the way working with the teams all over the world. And what we're also trying to do as our contribution to the market development is to provide much deeper knowledge of the audience and how to manage subscription revenue, how to grow subscription revenue through better relationships with your audience. So today's presentation will be focused on the thing we call benchmark data. Because we're working with so many different brands, we are able to collect very specific tactics and strategies and understand conversion numbers that are driving engagement, retention, acquisition. And there are, alongside the numbers, I will be also talking about specific tactics that we think work the best and that media companies need to focus on. At the same time, an interesting observation, and that is something I wanted to start with, because when we were discussing with organizers what would be the most relevant topic to share from this global perspective of Piana, the request was about optimizing revenue. At the same time, just recently, I was presenting to the INMA South Asia board, where majority of the companies there are Indian companies. And the number one question I've got there is whether Indian market is actually ready for subscription revenue. So interesting observation was that if you look at the number of companies that are already doing subscription on the Indian market, you will see that maybe if not everyone, but a big majority of big and middle-sized and even small media companies in some form or way already trying monetizing their audience directly. I didn't include here the companies that are doing paper article models just as a standalone model or e-paper subscriptions, because from our perspective, that's not a recurring revenue stream, not a subscription revenue. So if we add those companies who are asking people to pay for the content directly on their sites, this list will be way, way longer. But speaking again to what we are going to focus today, just want to briefly mention that the data that I will be talking about is not just our observation from one or two companies, right? Today we're working with over 600 media brands all over the world, in the US, Wall Street Journal or Bloomberg, in Europe, Economist or Ringel Axel Springer or Time Media, and hundreds of others across Southeast Asia. We work with the Hindu, Jagran, Hindustan Times, South China Morning Post, Nikkei, and so on and so on. And all of these media companies giving us amazing insights into how audience tend to interact with different type of content, whether it's a newspaper business, magazine business, entertainment business, politics business, or something else. We have a section of data that can tap into the specifics of the audience behavior with the different type of content. And don't be surprised that we have more unique users than the population of the world. That's because, of course, there is a lot of overlaps across different media companies in terms of the audience. So it's a pure number of unique browser sessions that we analyzing on a monthly basis, and over 150 billion page views across our client base, which, by the way, includes not only media companies. A few years ago, we acquired a company called AT Internet, which is a 25 years old digital analytics solution that is competing with Adobe Analytics and Google Analytics. And with this acquisition, we also added a lot of companies from other verticals. Interestingly enough, there is also a lot of collaboration right now between different brands and media companies, and it was very interesting for us to analyze how the audiences that are consuming content on news sites are also interacting with brands, and how media companies, especially in the context of advertising revenue, can better monetize audience data by giving more value and more knowledge about the audience to the brands. So, main thing that Piana is looking at is user journey, because quite often when we're talking about launching or optimizing subscription revenue, the thinking process, especially for the companies who are just starting this business model, is very binary. Like how we maximize the number of people who are clicking a buy button. In reality, user journey starts way below way earlier than this moment. It actually starts before the user lands on your site. And it's all about brand, relationship, and showing value of your content to your audience. So during the years, we built this user journey framework that you can see on the screen, where we attribute each of these stages to a certain stage of the user journey during the user life cycle. And we were measuring the number of users in each of the category and what is happening with them, and what is the best next action publishers need to look at to maximize engagement, conversion, acquisition, and retention of the readers. So when we were building the benchmark data set, we were not just looking at the average. We have this distribution in each of the category, right? What is the worst performing sites are doing and how they're doing it, and how they're performing, and how best performing sites performing as well. So for example, first column that you can see is the number of users who are visiting one page per month, right? And not surprised that majority of the audience are not coming back on a regular basis, right? So you can see that the median here is that 63% of the users of news sites globally are visiting just one page view per month. And the same goes for the other metrics, and during the presentation I will be talking specifically to each stage of the user journey and what we see there as a key metric to focus on and how to optimize it. So, as I mentioned, user journey is not starting when the user lands on your site, because of course we all interact with the audience across many different mediums: social media, messengers, emails, push notifications, and so on. And attribution analysis is a very useful tool, not just to understand how to drive more traffic to your site, but also how different marketing tactics to acquire the audience affecting subscription, affecting conversion. And that is why we think that you really need to think carefully where you're trying to attract the audience and what you want this audience to do when it lands on your site, like how you continue the experience from one medium to another. And for example, we all know that users who are coming from social networks like Facebook or Twitter tend to have much lower subscription rate than if we're talking about direct traffic or traffic that is coming from editorial or even promotional emails. But recently we've been looking at data about the number of different referral sources and specifically type of referrer, and have some interesting relationship between conversions and types and number of referrals. It turns out that users who visit a media subscription website via multiple channels, for example, social, direct, and search, they have a much higher conversion rate than other users coming just through a single channel. And we think that a proxy for brand connection, the more loyal you are to the brand, the more likely you are to follow on social media, sign up for emails, and interact via different channels. It also applies the audience development strategy, focus on building up multi-channel relationship with your users. And one kind of reason that we're so excited about opportunities open to us when we acquired earlier this year Social Flow. It's a company that is providing services for social media management, also for many big brands like New York Times, Wall Street Journal, Washington Post, is that now we're able to also analyze how people interacting with your content across different social media networks, and it drives additional insights in how to drive engagement even before people land to your site and see a paywall. Next thing that we will talk to is when the user land on the site, right? Where is your new visitor? It not necessarily means that this person is the first time seeing your brand or your content, but people who tend to come to your site just once a month are usually not really loyal to the brand that you're representing. So the question is how you can grow this loyalty and engagement, how you show value of your brand to the person who just landed on the site. Because another thing that we also do not believe in, and I was just having with the media group that is in top 3 in India the conversation yesterday about the fact that you need to, if you're producing so much content, it's usually hundreds of articles per day. First of all, it's really difficult just based on the editorial opinion to drive highest engagement when people deciding what to show to your to the readers. Another thing is important, and it's coming back to my point regarding understanding user journey, is that there is no point trying to convert the user when he doesn't understand your brand, doesn't value your content. So first you need to show this value. And one of the best things to do it is through relevant and personalized content recommendation. So when we talk about engagement, it takes us a recent benchmark we pulled out on performance of content recommendation, and Piano platform includes different type of content recommendation types. So it could be based on the semantic analysis of the content. So we look at the specific keywords that people are interested in to build user profiles. We also look at different behavioral patterns. So how people of one cohort reading the content comparing to the other one. So we can recommend content based on the interests of similar users to you, and so on. And what was interesting is that, first of all, based on the kind of research we made on this topic, the CTR, the click-through rate on the content that is machine learning optimized, is way higher, usually 2 times higher than recommended by the editorial team. But also there is a big game happening also on India market with many players trying to tap into this market and trying to show that they can do content recommendations. People start fighting for different algorithms, like most popular content or behavioral-based content or semantic-based content recommendation would perform better. In our experience, it's not exactly the case. Sometimes you can optimize for certain placement on your site, the content recommendation effectiveness based on the specific algorithm, but usually machine learning is doing it better. So if you allow machine learning to look at different users and their behavior and train the model based on this KPI click-through rate, then the combination of these algorithms will perform much better. So that is why, for example, within Piano, we have an auto-optimized algorithm that takes these different things that I talk about in one pool and train the model for each user to optimize it. Because sometimes you want even your homepage main article to be personalized for each specific visitor that is visiting it. And usually that's the best tactic to drive engagement and show the value of your brand. Next step is, once you build this initial engagement, once people start, or specific cohort of users started to visit your site at least 5 times, 10 times per month, the next stage is how you convert this user at least to the registered one. And I will explain why registered users are so important for the media business. So and there are a couple of things. Because we're focused today more on the subscription topic, I will talk from subscription perspective, but there is a big reason for driving more people from anonymous to known is advertising revenue. And just a quick note on the advertising revenue, right? We all know that third-party cookies are going away, and the value of the first-party data becomes essential for the advertising business to at least remain on the level of performance that is today. And for this purpose, publishers need to own more data about the audience. They cannot anymore rely on the external providers who will come and say, hey, just put our script on the site and we will give you $1, $2, $3 guaranteed CPM. You don't need to do anything. You do not need to collect any data. Everything will be fine. Not the case anymore, right? Of course, for Indian market, where Chrome browser represents probably 90% of the traffic, it's still less obvious. But across Europe, these numbers are different, because probably combining Firefox and Safari, it represents around 30% of the traffic. And when you are owning the data that you can, in a very transparent way, to provide to the advertiser, First of all, the performance of these campaigns is much higher. Secondly, the trust is much higher because it's not a black box like the one that provided by big platforms where you never know how the cohorts of the social demographic groups or user interests are built. So registration is the first step to create the strong connection with your reader, because the person who is willing to share personal data with you is already showing the kind of the loyalty to your brand. But now coming back to the subscription perspective, what we're seeing that registered users, people who are taking time to create an account and provide an email, they have a significantly higher conversion rate than anonymous users. So aside from the benefits for the advertising revenue, they also are part of the strategy to grow the subscription business. And one reason for high conversion rate is for many sites, these are users who probably started subscribers and maybe abandoned checkout after the registration process. So of course, continue communicating with them and finishing the flow of buying subscription might be one of the reasons of much higher conversion rate. But another reason is that you are not forcing users to give you the maximum commitment from the very beginning. You're gradually increasing the level of engagement of the users and the amount of commitment you're asking from them over time, over growth of the understanding of the value of your content for the audience. And that leads then to much higher conversion rate later. And this another graph kind of represents this idea, is that registered users can take time to become subscribers, right? You do not need to force them to be paying for your content from day one of the visit to your site. And the chart here shows the median share of subscribers and the time post-registration when they converted from registered to subscribers. So as you can see, there are some users who convert very quickly. And there is just interesting learning that you might be interested from the Hindu is that they have a free trial where people basically not forced to be paying once they want to subscribe to their premium content, but over 60% of the readers are deciding to buy subscription in the first week after they kind of registered for free trial, right? That's kind of shows the value of the content and the brand and the reasons why people want to support it with their money. So these numbers are important to know, to understand that if you're pursuing a registration plus subscription strategy, then you can have a much bigger pool to convert from. But you also need to think about what you will give to the user back for the registration, right? There is no difference if you're asking to pay money or asking just to register. One way or another, you are asking the user something to give to you, so you need to give something in return. One of the approaches that we're seeing working really well is the combination of the registered meter wall and the paywall. So Telegraph is doing it in the UK, where they're giving access to 3 premium articles based on the meter wall. Then if you want to get access to like 5 more, you need to register. And if you want to have access to unlimited amount of premium content, you need to be paying for monthly subscription. So moving forward to the phase called proposed, where the target action is to convert the user to the paying one. I deliberately didn't include this slide on the consideration, and we can talk about it separate time if any of you will be interested. Plus, you can find this benchmark report on Piana's site and read more about it. But many people also do not think a lot about how you present your offer to the user. Just one example that we learned with Business Insider over the years, something we call decoy offer. Quite often, you're giving the user options, quite limited, and you want to make this decision for the user as easy as possible, right? So pay the less. It's not the reality of the behavioral biases and behavioral economics that you can read about more. In reality, the less options you give, but the more focused the option on the one that you want the user to take, the better your results will be. So what happened with Business Insider with this decoy offer is that first they had just 2 plans, monthly and annual. And 90% of the users were converting on the monthly plan. And we will talk more about the kind of cons of this approach, because then you have much higher churn rate, much lower average revenue per user on an annual basis. So then we were doing experiments and we represented a 2-year plan. So then the annual plan became the most reasonable option because it had the biggest discount, the average commitment, and better price than the monthly plan. It turned things upside down. 80% of users from that moment started converting to the annual plan. It significantly decreased the churn rate. It helped to increase by 60% the average revenue per user and increase overall growth of the company. So let's talk about conversion. That's number one question I'm getting from everyone who's thinking about subscription. What is the conversion rate? Like how many people we will be able to convert from our readers to the paying one? And the reality is that considering conversion rate as a single number for all users doesn't tell you much, because conversion rate can vary significantly depending on each factor that I will talk in a second about. Users who visit from social comparing to those who visit by email. Users might differ by conversion rate depending on where you present the message and in which form, like literally how your template look like, can change the conversion rate in 10 times. So if you're offering discount price on the first year of subscription, you will have a higher conversion rate than full price offer. And where a user sees an offer and how it presented to the user matters a lot. So that is a very important table that gives you much broader picture and much more understanding of the truth about conversion rates. And what you're seeing here is the difference in conversion rates based on the messaging type. Landing page usually has about 20 times more conversion rate than a paywall. Locked paywall, where you cannot continue reading without paying, another word for it is a hard paywall, has 10 times higher conversion rate than a soft wall that can be dismissed without paying. And a ribbon format, where you have this banner in the bottom, probably if you visited Economy site, they've been using it, is performing the worst. And while even a locked paywall has a relatively low conversion rate, it's still a very important part of the messaging mix, right? Because again, it's not about the conversion, it is about communication. So the more touch points you have, the better user experience you have, the more appropriate the time of presenting the offer to the user, the higher your chances to convert this user. So one of the biggest factors is messaging time and location. And you will typically see that the higher conversion rate is on the landing page, because this is, people decide to visit to consider buying something from you. And that is why it has a much higher intent to purchase from this audience. And even though there may be a few users who see this landing page in total, it can drive a higher share of total subscription conversions. Another topic that is quite common to discuss in India is India is mobile-first country, right? So people tend to read all of their content on mobile devices, and that is why we need to optimize their experience for subscription on mobile devices. I will tell you more that in majority of developed countries, if we're talking about US or Japan that we work in as well, majority of the audience are doing the same. But this is what this benchmark data show, that converting audience on mobile devices is challenging. And what you see here is that the click rate between mobile and desktop audience is not so different, which suggests that mobile audiences are not a lost cause from conversion perspective. But the gap between devices comes after the click. Completion rate, the percentage of visitors who click on an offer that actually purchase, is twice as high on desktop than on mobile. And this speaks to be continue to be a barrier of mobile friction from a purely mechanical point of view. The pain of registering and paying on the phone is higher than on desktop. And it also might be the case that mobile users need different user experience and different type of communication and pricing and promotions to convert them at higher rates on mobile devices. One more thing from conversion perspective is, again, coming back to the referrer. So that is not changing even for India, that emails is the leading referrer where it comes to acquiring subscribers. And so as part of the customer journey is to capture emails so that you can communicate with your users, bring them back to the site, create appealing reason to return to the site and read relevant content. So you can also apply personalization within your emails or even push notification campaigns. And in this way, get a much higher conversion. Once you get the customer, the journey doesn't end there, right? Because we know, especially in India, I keep talking about it, that there are some differences with regard to how people tend to pay. And we know that, if it's UPI or net banking, usually people are not get used to do the recurring payments. Moreover, RBI doesn't make life easier for people who want to drive recurring revenue by introducing another changes in the past year who make it more difficult to convert the users. So when we're talking about the conversion, there are interesting factors to consider. First of all, you need to build this behavior, you need to help your users to build these habits of committing for the auto renewal, right? You can do it through different tactics, through the messaging, through the user experience, but it's important to say that if you're able to commit people to have recurring plans, your churn rates will, totally different planet. So this chart shows behavior related to auto-renewal disablement, and the top chart for monthly subscription and the bottom chart for annual subscription. So as you can see, that people who are subscribing monthly, they tend to cancel the auto-renewal much earlier than those who are subscribing annually. And while the previous charts show active cancellation, so when people deciding not to kind of continue the renewals, this chart is focused on the passive churn, which usually happens, and it usually represents up to 60% of overall cancellation. It usually happens because of the payment failure. So credit card expiration, or there is no money on the card, and so on. So it's also important to think about these points and present messaging to the user that will remind user upfront to make sure that the payment method will work. And coming back again on the importance of driving annual subscriptions, you can see here a difference between the monthly subscription. So if you look at full year of the revenue from the user, the first number is the average total number of users, in this case, for those who pay in $10 per month. And it's actually not even an annual, it's a 2-year value, right? And those who are committing for an annual subscription. And last point is, again, coming back to the loyalty, because you don't want people just renew. You want them to be ambassadors of your brand. So again, content recommendations that will show value, emails that will remind them to come back and continue reading, because passive churners or sleepers are typically people who are just not getting enough understanding of the value of your content early enough. So that is, again, coming back to the fact that the longer the user is your subscriber, the lower the churn rate of this user, right? So you need to reminding people about the value of your content. You need to continue communicating with them. You need to also apply propensity models, right? That is a new modern thing that not many companies are able to do, where you can predict the likelihood of person to cancel and send appropriate relevant message to mitigate this risk. So all of the things that I've been talking about, again, kind of proved on many different publishers. I decided to put here a couple of clients who have kind of familiar brands and show you the numbers in terms of the pure results that they were able to achieve, primarily through iteration, optimization, and analysis, right? Like Funke, who decreased churn rate by 50%, or Insider, who increased over 3 years of working with us their revenue in 17 times from the subscription revenue. So the number one thing that I want you to take from this presentation is less about even specific tactics, but more about the fact that the more you try and iterate, the higher rate of growth you will see. And the main mistake we're seeing Indian publishers are usually taking is when they're launching subscription business model, they're thinking that's it, right? We're done, we finish our job, but the work just starts there. That's it from me for today. We'll love to answer your questions, or maybe through the interview.
Great, very interesting presentation, Alex. So I work with Newslaundry, where a large chunk of my work and role, Alex would know this, revolves around product and subscription revenue. So the insights in the presentation that you guys saw just right now, it's basically from the benchmark subscription report that Piano puts out. If I'm correct, this is the second one that you guys have put out. And if you're someone who works on news consumption patterns or subscription revenue, you'll find like a treasure trove of data. A lot of things that we've done personally at Newslaundry have come from the insights in these reports. So Alex, I know you've been meeting publishers in India and you have so much data. Like how I was mentioning yesterday that Piano has so much of data on news consumption and user insights that it's essentially a gold mine for any publisher. So now, of course, you've been meeting publishers here. What do you think are the challenges that are unique to the Indian market? So, for example, in the presentation, you mentioned that Hindu had introduced a trial plan which has had a lot of success for them. Now, I personally know in India, trial plans are a pain in the ass because the UPIs doesn't work. There's a RBI guideline also. So, within the global challenges, which ones do you think are the ones that are unique to India?
I think that it's not 100% unique to India because there are several other countries in developed markets where people just do not get used to pay with the credit card, or not. The majority of population didn't have credit cards, so you need to be creative in terms of the payment methods. But I think that, again, while most of the companies in India think a lot about this last point of conversion, which might represent different challenges due to the payment methods, I think that if they would be thinking more about the top of the funnel and how they're better convert the user on each stages of the user journey, then even a potentially relatively low conversion rate and potentially much higher churn rate will not be such a big of a problem. Another thing is that people are in Indian market, if we're talking about media companies, tend to think less about retention. They're basically kind of admitting the fact that because of the payment methods, it's a leaky bucket. Like, it's okay to lose 80% of the subscribers every month, but in reality, no, it's not. And there are different tactics that can fight it, right? Starting from the communication to the different tools that you can be using. So I would suggest that, again, answering your question directly, is thinking less about the conversion, thinking more about overall user experience.
Correct. And I know you work a lot with legacy publishers also. So for example, in India, you're working with Hindu. Yesterday when we were chatting, we were talking about how inherently it's a lot more difficult for legacy media publishers to figure out a crack subscription model, because over the years, the way they've built their product or editorial strategy is more from an ad perspective, from an ad model. Because essentially what you're doing is you're figuring out a volume of content that can then be leveraged for advertisements or ad revenue. So in that case, now that you're meeting legacy publishers, what is usually your pitch? And B, do you think like big legacy media players, especially in India, because I know there are a lot of people who work with legacy media who are here and who are trying to figure out how to do digital subscription. Do you think they'll be able to figure it out without altering the product offering that they have?
It's an interesting question. I think that it, of course, depends on the type of the legacy media, right? And good news is that many of them already have a subscription model just for print. So technically, there is no problem to explain to your audience that if you want to have quality content, that you need to support it with your money. I think the main problem usually is in the mindset that we like to call it product mindset or design mindset, design thinking mindset, because usually what we're seeing with legacy media is there was the whole story of Isaacson, who written the biography of Steve Jobs and a few other folks, who was in the early days of the internet, basically talking about this trade-off that publishers took when advertisers came and said, "Hey, don't worry about money. We will pay you money. Just put our ad and focus on your content and on reaching the audience." And he said that maybe that's where we took a wrong path. Because if at that time we would say, no, listen, like we don't want to be influenced by advertisers in our editorial policy, the industry will be in a completely different place. But same happening right now is many publishers probably just do not believe enough in the quality of the content, and they do not believe enough that the content they're producing worth paying for. That is why when even they're switching to or introducing subscription business model just because it's a trend,
thing, yeah.
Yeah, they're not changing their content, right? They're just putting the meter paywall on top and saying, okay, from that moment of time, if you're reading over 15 pages, start paying to us. Product mindset requires you to start thinking why our audience value us. And if we do not have this unique content, okay, create a separate editorial team that will be focused just on things that people are ready to pay for, and it will pay off.
So people who you meet in legacy media, are they receptive to these ideas? Because the way it works, at least in the news or the media industries, you are often trying things that are new. So for example, during pandemic, ad revenue obviously sunk in, and then a lot of people were trying subscription or reader revenue. And when you're trying something that is the in thing or that is in the trend, you're just doing it for the sake of it. Whereas you were just saying you actually need a product mindset. So often when you're meeting CEOs, when people are at the decision-making position, do you think they're receptive of these ideas that they have to drastically change the editorial offering also? Or are they just looking at, okay, our primary revenue will still come from advertisement, maybe 80%, 90%, but maybe like 5 years, 6 years down the line, this is something where is the future? So let's have something to try this out.
Yeah, it's funny you asking it because I was thinking a lot about it in the past couple of months, and I would say there are two cases or two different scenarios that I'm seeing. One is that the top management of the company is very perceptive, very open to these things, right? They're traveling a lot, they're talking with many international media companies, they're understanding what helped them to achieve their positions on the market. And one of the primary reasons they're talking to us is because they want to introduce these changes in their organization. The main disconnect happening for this scenario is usually not even on the execution level. I would say even more is that, there are sometimes you're getting in troubles because of you're too focused on, technical things and overthinking stuff. In India, there are tons of great, bright developers and engineers. And once they, put their hands in some technology, they want to tear it apart. They want to make as complex things as possible because it's an interesting engineering challenge. Like even in my team and the developers, you quite often need to stop them and just say, folks, we're here not for the sake of the engineering challenges. We want to solve certain business problems. So what is missing usually in these organizations, especially legacy organizations, is this middle layer, marketing product layer of people who might have experience in driving users through the funnel. It might be in SaaS business, right, in software business, in some other places, but they need to have this mindset that we are here not to build complex propensity models and machine learning stuff. We're about optimizing the user journey, right? So once you introduce, like with the Hindu, once they introduce this layer within the organization, everything started to grow much faster. A second scenario is that quite often the kind of even C-level in the company, they're disconnected from the editorial team. And an editorial team is this some alien that we like whatever we do in the business, we should not.
They're working in silos basically.
Yes. And then when editorial team is saying, no, we know better what to put on our site, no, we know better what our readers want to read, they might be right, but let's put the data on top of it and prove it, right? If it's okay, if it's correct, then we don't need to change it. But if it's not, then we need to change something.
Correct. I think, and in many ways, that's also the legacy of an ad model, because in ad model, you need those silos, right? Because editorial team needs to work very differently than the sales team, because sales teams are essentially looking at just serving the advertiser, where editors are looking at stories editorially. But in a subscription model, both the subscription team and the editorial team are much more aligned. So for example, in markets like India, the reader revenue pool is quite small, right? Because there aren't a lot of people who pay for news. So at Newslaundry, we've been doing subscriptions for a decade. So I know at least for the first 3-4 years, we had to spend a lot of time and energy into convincing people why they should subscribe. So we used to tell people that when advertisers pay, advertisers are served, and when the public pays, the public is served. So a large part of our marketing, our awareness campaigns was hinged on the idea that for quality journalism to happen, you have to pay for it. Now, obviously, there are now a lot more news organizations who are doing subscriptions. So I think subscription and subscription growth is also plateauing, right? Because essentially in India, you have limited bandwidth, right? At max, you'll pay money to maybe 2 news organizations, and that's like a maximum, right? Because news at the end of a day are also competing with, say, the likes of Netflix and other OTT players. So as a company who focuses a lot on user journey and subscription, do you see that as a challenge? Because, okay, maybe if you use analytics, if you use data science, if you streamline the processes, whatever is the limited revenue pool, you will get all of that. But what beyond that, right? Because is that something, is that a worry that any publisher has sort of highlighted, because there are so many few people in India paying for news?
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. I totally agree with you. Moreover, data supports it that usually when we're talking about subscription revenue, we're not fighting for price or for even better content. We're fighting for the wallet of the customer, right? And if the customer is already subscribed to Netflix and Spotify, he might subscribe to one nationwide news and maybe one local news. That is why, of course, first to the market usually gets advantage if he's doing it right and keeps iterating. But at the same time, I see many companies in India in the publishing space who just waiting for, I don't know, probably miracle. They kind of looking at the market, they're saying, oh, but we talked with these guys, it didn't work for them, so probably it's not going to work for us, which is completely opposite to how it should happen. Because if it doesn't work for someone else, it opens the opportunity. It means that, if people are ready to pay, just you can do it better, right? So I do agree with you that, of course, the pool of subscribers is not infinite, and you need to be first to be different. And that is where I see the biggest trend across many different markets is that publishers tend to get off of the stream of the breaking news. Because there are the same news agencies that are writing same news, and then editorial team that are just trying to put their words on top of that, but dramatically doesn't change the story, and find their niche where they will be unique, right? And it starts actually with the understanding of your audience.
Correct. So we have roughly 10 minutes left. We'll just open it for audience question. And I have a couple of questions, but I'll first take questions from audience. Anyone has a question or a comment on Alex's presentation? Okay, so okay, the gentleman at the middle, yeah.
I have two small questions, if time permits.
Sure.
My first one is that, taking a cue from Substack, is it a good idea that if individual writers started charging within a news platform, like had a different payment paywall for each one of them? And my second question is that, looking at the graph, is it a good idea, again, to reduce the prompts for subscription on a mobile user interface? Because as it is, it wouldn't go through, it's very unlikely that it would go through. And then driving up adoption on the mobile platform, and then putting up more payment prompts on the desktop interface.
Thank you for that question. So on the Substack, I think it's interesting technology, and there were multiple attempts to do something like that. Medium basically is offering similar approach, asking people to pay for the subscription to the specific user, to the specific author. The question is that it's not going to be a replacement for news sites, right? This is more niche content, and I think it found its place on the market, but it's not going to be a major revenue stream, right, for the individual contributor. It's definitely a good revenue stream for Substack or media as another example, but it's probably more of a way to grow your fan base than generate significant amount of money. At the same time, emails as a medium is often introduced as one of the values that you can include in your subscription package. So, for example, Economist, if you want to, if you are buying subscription, they also include exclusive daily, chief editor kind of analysis of events happen during the day. So that is something that people are ready to pay for sure. To your second question on the mobile, yes, definitely it requires changing the user experience. So you cannot, put same type of banners on the screen. You need to optimize. Some of the good examples I'm seeing also from the Hindu, how they're doing this market, but there are many more. You can go to Business Insider, you can go to Forbes sites, and they're also doing it right. So I would say that, and also it depends on the payment method. So one of the things that we experimented with to reduce this friction, we actually call this feature internally frictionless pay checkout, is on Apple devices. We through the integration between the payment gateway, biometric authentication, we are able to just through the Face ID recognition, immediately create the user account through the Apple ID, make a charge through Apple Pay, right, and give access to the content basically just with user looking at the screen, right? That's it. That had really great conversion rates. On Android, it's way more difficult to do. But I think this type of user experiences, that's kind of showing how user experience on mobile devices should be done.
I just, on that, I think it's a double-edged sword also, because with Apple, if you're using Apple login and Apple payment, you're losing 30% revenue. I think Abhinandan has a question.
Yeah. You know, the graph you showed, the numbers of the conversion rate for appeals, you know, the emails being the highest and Facebook being the lowest in percentage terms. I just want to understand that's in percentage terms, but in absolute numbers, from a cost-benefit analysis point of view. For example, if we put out an appeal on Twitter and 2 of my influencer friends retweet that, which is like, if they have 2 or 3 million followers, there's no way I'm sending 2 or 3 million emails. So the percentage of an email conversion may be higher, but do we have data in absolute numbers? Is the conversion from Twitter as much as email? Am I clear on the question? Like in percentage?
I understand. I understand. Yes, you're right. Of course, we need to look at the whole funnel, right? In emails, you have more friction points, more stages where people might drop. Like first, how many of them subscribe, how many of them will open email, how many of them will click with an email, then land on the site, and from there, that's where we see this conversion number. Twitter itself is not gonna give you subscription, right? It's again how many people will turn to your site from Twitter, clicking on the article, and of course each of the number is relative to your audience, right? So in absolute numbers, you can take your numbers and probably apply these percentages and compare what's your email base, what's your Twitter base, how many users are coming from Twitter, and multiply it on this percentage and see, you know, the number will be higher, right? So what is important to think about here is that we're not trying to choose the best, right? We're trying to talk about the fact that you need to interact through multiple channels, but do not forget about channels. And, you know, many people are saying, well, in India, it's, you know, it's a phone number based communication industry, so emails do not really work. And in reality, they indeed tend to work less effective for younger audience, right? But still, for many legacy media whose audience in 30s, 40s, this type of medium work well, and editors should not forget about it. It's still very important, and this number just shows the level of importance.
I think we're almost out of time, right? We have to wrap up now. Great. Okay. Thanks a lot, Alex. Alex has come all the way from Poland to present at Media Rumble. It's been great meeting you, and I hope we see you again in subsequent Media Rumble editions.
Pleasure to be here. Thank you.